and we must elect these governors and counselors on the basis of equal rights, without distinction of sex or age, by universal, direct, equal, and open ballot. Thus ended the said famous Kashia. When this subsequent universal Hasnamas Lenthro Hamsanin had finished inscribing this Kashia, indeed unprecedented there, he arranged an enormous and costly banquet, to which he invited all the learned beings from all of Nievia, taking upon himself all their traveling expenses, and at the end of this banquet he showed them his Kashir. When the learned beings then gathered at that free feast from almost the whole of Nievia, saw that indeed unprecedented Kashir, they were at first so astounded that they became, as it is said there, as if petrified. And only after a considerable time did they gradually begin looking at each other with dumbfounded glances and exchanging opinions in whispers. Chiefly, they asked one another how was it possible that not a single learned being nor a single ordinary being had known or guessed that there, in their own country, such a learned being with such knowledge existed. Suddenly one of them, namely the oldest among them, who enjoyed the greatest reputation, jumped up on the table like a boy, and in a loud voice, and with the intonation which had already long before become proper to the learned beings there of new formation, and which has also reached the contemporary learned beings, uttered the following: "Listen, and all of you be aware that we, the representatives of terrestrial beings assembled here, who have, thanks to our great learning, already attained independent individuality, have the happiness to be the first to behold with our own eyes the creation of a Messiah of divine consciousness sent from above to reveal world truths to us." Thereupon began that usual maleficent, what is called mutual inflation, which had already long ago been practiced among the learned beings of new formation, and chiefly on account of which no true knowledge, which has chanced to reach them, ever evolves there as it does everywhere else in the universe, even merely from the passage of time itself. But on the contrary, even the knowledge once already attained there is destroyed, and its possessors always become shallower and shallower. And the rest of the learned beings then began shouting and pushing each other in order to get near Lenthro Hamsanin, and addressing him as their long-awaited Messiah, they conveyed to him by their admiring glances what are called their high titillation. The most interesting thing about it all is that the reason why all the other learned beings were so greatly amazed, and so freely gave vent to what are called their learned snivellings, lay in a certain extremely strange conviction which had been formed in the psyche of your favorites, thanks as always to the same abnormally established conditions of ordinary existence, that if anybody becomes a follower of an already well-known and important being, he thereby seems to be to all other beings almost as well-known and important himself. So it was, on the strength of his being very rich, and what is more important, already very famous, that all the other learned beings of that time of the country Nievia immediately manifested themselves approvingly towards this Lenthro Hamsanin. Well then, my dear boy, when after the said banquet the learned beings of Nievia returned home, they immediately began firstly to speak among their neighbors, and later more and more widely, here, there, and everywhere, about that unprecedented Kashir itself, and secondly, already foaming at the mouth to persuade and convince everybody of the truth of those revelations which that great Lenthro Hamsanin had inscribed on this Kashir Reitlir. The result of it all was that the ordinary beings of the town Kron Buchon, as well as of other parts of the country Niebia, talked among themselves of nothing but these revelations. And gradually, as it also usually happens there, almost everywhere, beings became divided into two mutually opposing parties, one of which favored the invention of the subsequent universal Hasnamas, and the other the already existing and well-fixed forms of being existence. Thus it continued during almost a whole terrestrial year, during which time the ranks of the contending parties increased everywhere, and towards each other there grew one of their particular properties called hate. The result of which was that one sorrowful day in the town of Kronbuchon itself, there suddenly began among the beings who had become followers of one or the other of the two said mutually opposite currents, their process of what is called civil war. Civil war is the same as war. The difference is only that in ordinary war, beings of one community destroy the beings of another community, while in a civil war, the process of reciprocal destruction proceeds among beings of one and the same community, as for example, brother annihilates brother, father, son, uncle, nephew, and so on. At the outset, during the 4 days that the horrible process was at its height in Kronbuchon, and the attention of other beings of the country of all Niebia was concentrated on it, everything was still relatively quiet in the other towns, but here and there small what are called skirmishes occasionally took place. When, at the end of the 4th day, those who were for the invention of Lenthro Hamsanin, that is, for the learned beings, were victorious in Kronbuchon, then, from that time on, the same process also began at all the large and small points of the whole surface of Niebia. That widespread, terrifying process continued until there appeared hordes of learned beings, who, as it is said, feeling firm ground beneath their feet, compelled all the surviving beings to accept the ideas of Lenthro Hamsanin, and immediately destroyed everything. And from then on, all the three-brain beings of Niebia became followers of the invention of Lenthro Hamsanin, and soon after, in that community, there was established a special what is called republic. A little later, the community Niebia, being at that period great and what is called powerful, began, as it also usually happens there, making war on the neighboring communities for the purpose of imposing upon them also her new form of state organization. From that time on, my boy, on the largest continent of your planet, the processes of reciprocal destruction among these strange three-brained beings began to proceed as before, and at the same time there were gradually changed and finally destroyed those various beneficent forms of their ordinary existence, which had already been fixed thanks to the ideally foreseeing reason of our now most very saintly Ashiata Shiemash. Thereupon, there again began to be formed on the surface of your planet, only to be destroyed anew and to give place to others, numerous separate distinct communities with every kind of form of interstate organization. Although the direct effect of that maleficent invention of the now universal Asnamas Lenthro Hamsanin was that among your favorites, the practice was revived of existing in separate distinct communities, and they again